Welcome in, everybody. This is Two-Way. I'm Two-Way Tonight is the name of the program, and my name is Mark Halperin. Grateful to you for joining this evening. We have a lot to cover and some great guests and some big news. The biggest story, the thing we'll spend the most time on, continues to be what's going on in the Southland in Southern California, Los Angeles area. Two great Californians will join us to talk about that. We're going to talk about Elon Musk, and we're going to talk about Scott Bessent, and we're going to talk about Brian Wilson. So if you're of a certain age or certain taste in music, the death of Brian Wilson is not a surprise. Dealt with long health problems for a long time. But I've often said two things. One is in the age we live in, there's so many more famous people than there were, 100 years ago because of media. And lots of people die who affect lots of us. But Brian Wilson is, I'll say, a singular figure. The only musician who the Beatles were afraid of. So influential and the creative genius behind what is considered one of the best rock albums of all time. Some consider it the best, Pet Sounds. So we'll talk about Brian Wilson. The other thing I say all the time is one of the things I want to do in two ways, obituary programs, because it gives an opportunity for people to share an experience and have the community talk about their recollection. So if you want to get in on the conversation and talk about Brian Wilson and you're here on the Two-Way platform, please raise your hand in honor of the memory of Mr. Wilson. Please don't put smack in the chat if you're watching on YouTube or on X. And you can ask about other things. But again, if you want to talk about Brian Wilson, I'd love to do it because I've been spending most of my day on that because like Paul and John, Brian Wilson affected me quite a bit. Genius, true genius, and dealt with a lot of tough stuff in his life. We're going to start, though, before we go back to California, we're going to talk about Iran. Okay, this is a hugely undercovered story, and I was thinking about it on my own, and then Matthew Bartlett texted me some stuff, and I realized, why am I having trouble? There's Matthew. So let's review the bidding. Here's Matthew. Matthew, welcome in. Matthew, amongst other things, besides having deep New Hampshire ruts, you worked in the State Department. Am I right?
Yeah, precisely, Mark. Was a Trump State Department appointee first term.
Yeah. So over the weekend, the president unexpectedly went to Camp David from New Jersey, not back to the White House, but to Camp David. And it was reported, I believe, first by Axios that he went there to have meetings with his national security team, including the vice president and all the other likely suspects, to talk about Iran. And we know that today, put up number 18, please. The U.S. State Department announced that they were withdrawing all diplomats from Iraq. And there's saber rattling coming from Tehran, from the foreign minister, I believe, some senior official in the Iranian government. And there's also a great deal of concern that the talks for a nuclear accord are falling apart. And the president, in a recent interview, expressed pessimism about the prospect of striking this nuclear deal. And of course, as you all know, this also comes amid lots of conversation about the possibility that Israel, after years and years of thinking about it, talking about it, planning for it, will engage in a military strike against Iran. Many people, or experts, say Iran is much closer to a nuclear device than they've ever been. And no president in the last 5 has had any policy but that Iran may not develop a nuclear capability. And I'll add this, although it's been conventional wisdom for a long time that it's impossible really to strike their nuclear capability without causing World War III or nuclear fallout all over the region that would alienate the West and Israel from young Arabs and Palestinians across the region, Muslims across the region. There's some talk that Israel might now have a plan to do this in a way that would minimize the blowback. Don't know what that would be, but there's talk of that. So the reason I wanted Matthew to come on, and the reason I'm leading with this, we'll get to California in a minute, is I got a lot of sources who've been emailing me and texting me for the last 2 days saying, watch this. Some keying off of Camp David, some keying off of other stuff. So I just want to, if you look at the media right now, you'll see there's some talk about the State Department announcement today, some talk about trouble in the talks, but I've not heard. I've not heard. Now, is that coming from you, Matthew? Is that loud sound? Somebody else needs to mute. Somebody else needs to mute. Not sure where that is. All right, Noah, you'll find that. Matthew, I've talked enough. Tell people your thoughts on what's going on or what might be going on.
Yeah, like you said, Mark, there's been some breadcrumbs, and then there's been some puzzle pieces. And today, through increasingly interesting and increasingly heightened, even in the region. As you said, the entire national security apparatus was in Camp David. There were scant reports, but some said that there was a call to Bibi afterwards. Then you saw President Trump on the New York Post podcast stating that he was losing patience with Iran. And then you go back to, again, reporting that Mark Levine went to the White House for a meeting to encourage a strike against Iran, contrary to what Tucker Carlson had been promoting. Then today, yes, you saw, Matt Lee of the AP, just an incredible reporter, saying that, the talks that Iran had not responded to the proposals, that the talks this weekend in Oman were off. You saw the Free Beacon actually report that Iran has test fired a ballistic missile. You mentioned John Hudson of the Washington Post, his reporting that the region is looking to potentially move or evacuate people out of U.S. bases. But the most interesting nugget that I saw today was Tom Cotton's tweet. Pete Hegseth was on the Hill today. His testimony, Tom Cotton's tweet said today, SecDef, Pete Hegseth confirmed that Iran's terrorist regime is actively working towards a nuclear weapon. For the sake of our national security, the security of our allies and millions of civilians in the region, this cannot be allowed to happen. So this all seems to be moving towards a much more potentially, kinetic response. As you said, probably underreported, but it seems as if very heightened. I don't have any special information. I'm no longer at the State Department, but I did speak with some former colleagues who just said that the situation is, quote, getting tight.
Yeah. Matthew, brilliant connection of the dots. And again, most of what you've cited is publicly available, but you've connected it brilliantly. And you and I are both hearing from people. There seems to be something going on. Now, I cannot count on the fingers of both hands the number of times in the last 15 years I've been told by sources, Iran is about to explode. This is about to happen. Israel's going to attack or Iran's going to attack. So we're not here to be ahead of the information. We're not here to be alarmist, but we are here to put on your radar that something's happening. And although it's only one of the many things Matthew cited, Donald Trump going from New Jersey, not back to the White House, but to Camp David, it's just not normal behavior for him. There's some reason why they all felt they had to convene at Camp David. So we'll keep tracking it. I'm going to make not a prediction, but I'll tell you it's a possibility. Our conversation right here by the bottom of the hour at the end of the program may yield some source information, may pry loose a little bit more. So stand by for that. Matthew, thank you for joining. Always love having you on. If you hear more, you'll let us know. Grateful to you. All right. LA, no major new developments. The curfew's on for another night. More U.S. forces have arrived in the Los Angeles area, National Guard active duty, and a lot of confrontation, particularly on Capitol Hill today and at the White House briefing, where both sides continue to have their narratives. The Democrats continue to say Donald Trump wants to declare martial law and deport everybody's favorite seamstress, and the Republicans say that the left is too tolerant of terrorism or violent acts against law enforcement. We've talked about the sort of broad issues a lot, but I'm grateful and delighted to have with us now two people who understand California better than I ever will. Here's Rob Stutzman, longtime Republican strategist and expert on everything Golden State. Rob, tell people, how long have you lived in California? Where do you live now? And as I bring our other guest in, just your overview of where you think we are with the governor, the mayor, the president, et cetera.
Third generation Californian, born in the South, which is why I'm a Dodger fan. Pretty much grew up in the North, why I'm a Niner fan. Live now in Sacramento, right here in our state capital. Where we're at the moment is interesting. As you delineated with what's going on the Hill today, everyone can find the narrative they want. Each side can find their hero in this. It's almost like it's a partnership, pro wrestling partnership between Trump and Newsom. so they can give each other what they need, which is an opponent. Where it goes from here, though, I think there's very much a sense of, well, are we going to see Marines actively in the field with ICE units on enforcement actions, or is this going to start to calm and back down a bit? Uh, that seems to be the crux of it. The images are going to matter, right? The image this week is the guy waving the flag on top of, around burning cars, Mexican flag. That's the image that the White House wants. It's a terrible image for the Democrats. But if that imagery changes a little bit to the aforementioned seamstresses, if that really starts to happen with, with Marines outside with gun on domestic deployment, I don't know. I don't know exactly where that narrative may shift. There's no comp for it really in American history.
Right. All right. Thank you, Rob. And again, grateful for joining. Also grateful to Lisa McRee for joining, my former colleague at ABC News. I was in charge of getting her coffee and making sure her faxes were pressed nice and smooth. And now Lisa lives in the Southland and host of LA Times Today on Spectrum One, covering the greater Metroplex. Lisa, couldn't be happier to see you. Love to hear your overview of where you think things are right now and where things are headed.
Well, first I want to say delighted to meet Rob Stutzman, and I was going to try to book Ed Rollins, but I think I'd rather have you if you don't mind. I want to talk Republican strategy next week. Okay.
Happy to.
Well, it's funny you were just talking, and Rob, you brought up the military presence. There it is very rare that civil disturbances necessitate a military response, right? And there was an act. It was called the Posse Comitatus Act of 1878 that was specifically written to prevent the misuse of military powers in civilian affairs. But it has happened over and over. Just a few years later, the military was brought into California when there was a huge nationwide railroad strike. And it turned out to be a huge debacle and a PR backfire for them, because what happened is once the local guards had to realize they were going to shoot their sister's husband if they did anything because they were local. It was a debacle. But again, we've seen it again and again and again. We saw military brought out for all the civil rights, not all the civil rights, but many civil rights actions in the mid 20th century. Of course, in 1965, we had the Watts riots here in Los Angeles. The military came and there were 30 people killed, 2/3 of them by police and guard. We had the Rodney King protests in 1992. And by the way, military greatly wanted here. I mean, things were out of control on the streets of LA. And then we remember, Kent State, right? When the military is called into a college campus for a Vietnam protest and 4 dead in Ohio, as Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young wrote. So those are times when it's happened before. Does this event rise to that occasion? And because of social media, people are consuming tiny little snippets of a 1 square mile area in downtown LA. And hey, yeah, nobody wants to see innocent Waymos, I will say, innocent Waymos set ablaze, right? And graffiti all over the buildings in downtown, like downtown doesn't have enough problems. Cinder blocks being thrown at sheriff's vehicles, not okay. And there are real questions about why are people waving Mexican flags if that offends people. So these images are being pumped out and making the whole city look aflame. It's a 500 square mile city. This is 1 square mile. And there are a couple of little pop-ups in Paramount and Compton. But again, bringing in that sort of military force, there's real questions about it. And I do worry somebody's going to get hurt.
Yeah, brilliant. Love the overviews from both of you. Let's look at some stuff that happened today and get your comments. And we'll start with some my friend Harry Anton at CNN said, this is number 8, talking about Governor Newsom. Lots of speculation that he's doing this for politics. I don't think so, but I know others do. Let's look at Harry talking about how this has impacted people's awareness of the governor of California. Roll 8, please.
Let's just start off. If Gavin Newsom wanted to take on Donald Trump and loves the attention, he has 100% gotten it. Take a look here. Google searches of Gavin Newsom with Donald Trump. Get this up. 9,700% versus a week ago. More folks are Googling Gavin Newsom's name with Donald Trump than ever before in Google searches dating all the way back since 2004. Donald Trump was able to make a name for himself through The Apprentice, through all of his business ventures. He is now making a name for Gavin Newsom, who seems more than willing to relish in this fight.
What are the numbers?
Enough of Harry. Lisa, how would you appraise how the governor's doing for his constituents? Forget the politics in 2028. How do you think he's doing for his constituents?
But you can't forget the politics because he's a politician and it's all politics. And look, he's got to, put on, everybody's putting on a show. Everybody, right, Rob? I mean, that's what this is. The Trump administration does a better television show than the Democrats. Period. End of story. And thanks Mark Burnett, who created The Apprentice or whatever. But they're well-schooled, well-versed. They know what they're doing in terms of creating images and all that. Gavin Newsom is doing what he needs to do. Karen Bass is doing, she has to stand up for the city of LA and say, hey, this is an overreaction. I honestly can't judge whether he's doing right by the citizens. I mean, his hands are sort of tied when your state now your state guard has been federalized by the presidency. It changes your power to manipulate it. So listen, I just think everybody wishes that they'd left it in the hands of sheriffs and police who were trained in civil disobedience rather than military, because I do worry about collateral damage.
All right, Rob, here is Donald Trump in an interview with Miranda Devine, who will be amongst my guests on Next Up tomorrow. New York Post starting a new podcast. This is number 3. This is Donald Trump talking about Gavin Newsom to Miranda.
I want him to do is do a good job. I'd rather have him do a good job than a bad job, even though politically, I guess you could take the other extreme. He's doing a poor job. He's doing a poor job with the train. How about the train that's costing like 40 times more than it was supposed to?
Yeah. Did you talk about that?
Doesn't go, I always mention, it doesn't go to San Francisco or Los Angeles. It's way short because it was too expensive to go in. The whole thing is crazy. It is the worst run, one of the worst run places. We have a lot of them. In almost all cases run by Democrats.
Rob, how do you feel about the conventional wisdom that within California politics and for 2028, being at war with Donald Trump is great for Gavin Newsom?
I think it's great for him for his party politics. Whether it's for 28 or not, I don't know, but it's a party that hasn't had a leader. It's been rudderless since the election. And, the base wants resistance. Keep in mind, this is a guy that, 8 weeks ago is broing out with MAGA media figures on his podcast, absolutely pissing off his base. But he's been thrust into these circumstances, and I think he is playing politics, more mindful of politics, probably more than governing. I mean, every governor in the nation would fight like hell to regain control of their guard if it was taken from them and federalized the way it has been. But, I mean, Lisa said it. I mean, this is indistinguishable from the political zeitgeist that is created for him. I joked earlier about the partnership between he and Trump. I think Trump knows exactly what he's doing in elevating Gavin, joking about him being arrested. I mean, that is just gold. J.D. Pritzker's probably convening meetings and trying to figure out how he can get arrested by Trump instead. So, Harry's search data is the evidence that this is working for Newsom politically, and he's got, ironically, he's got no one to thank more than Donald J. Trump.
Raise your hand if you want to get in the conversation. We'll do some California stuff, and then we'll come back to Scott Bessent and a few other issues. Here's the White House press secretary today. When asked, this would be number 5, please. Asked about the rioters. Caroline Levitt with a tone you will recognize.
Left-wing radicals waving foreign flags viciously attacked ICE and Border Patrol agents as well as Los Angeles police officers. These criminals injured police, threw rocks at police cars and officers, burned vehicles, shut down freeways, and lobbed Molotov cocktails all because the Trump administration was removing violent criminal illegal aliens from the city. These attacks were aimed not just at law enforcement, but at American culture and society itself. Rioters burned American flags, chanted "Death to ICE," and spray-painted anti-American slogans on buildings. But President Trump will never allow mob rule to prevail in America. The most basic duty of government is to preserve law and order, and this administration embraces that sacred responsibility. Democrats like Governor Gavin Newsom and Mayor Karen Bass shamefully failed to meet their sworn obligations to their citizens. They didn't have the courage to do the right thing and protect law-abiding Californians from rioters. That's why President Trump deployed the National Guard and mobilized Marines to end the chaos and restore law and order. The mob violence is being stomped out.
My first question. Go ahead.
But I know I have a question for Rob. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I'm not going to do the whataboutism about January 6th. We all know it in the back of our heads. Okay. But Rob, I want to ask you, the Dodgers fan, what happened downtown over the weekend? I've seen worse when the Dodgers blow a playoff, right? I mean,
or when the Lakers win. Yeah.
Or when the Lakers win. There's this little tiny crazy amount of, of people, right? Like who, take to the streets. Not to say there's not righteous anger and indignation about these raids, especially people who are with papers or are here on certain visas or student visas get swept up, which it seems like they are. But in terms of painting it as this is as bad as January 6th, it's just not true. And I think that everybody agrees that the Democrats blew it by not going after low-hanging fruit. Why didn't the Democrats close the border? Why didn't the Democrats deport known criminals? Why wasn't that a priority? I mean, there was low-hanging fruit they could have taken, and now they're, listen, nobody wants to go from, we're deporting, as Karen Bass said, hardened criminals to chasing down a drywaller in a Home Depot parking lot. But what I miss is that, Congress has dropped the ball for decades now on fixing this immigration problem, and everybody's going like this, and nobody's looking at them, So that's my rant.
Okay.
Rob, you go.
Rob, go.
Well, Levitt said something in her rant that was interesting. She had to read that. You'd think she could just recite that. She talked about criminals, that they were removing criminals from the streets. That's the narrative I think that they may be starting to overplay their hand on. The head of the Western Agricultural Association, represents the big farmers, said yesterday his members are starting to report of detention amongst their workforce. If this goes beyond gangsters and criminals, as Congressman Valadao was saying yesterday, as Congressman Gonzalez of Texas was saying yesterday, hey, focus on the criminals and the gangsters. If it goes beyond that, the visuals change, and I think the White House risks this narrative.
Absolutely right, Rob. They've rolled out the same 8 people. I mean, if I hear, talk about a basket of deplorables, if I hear these 8 rapists and traffickers, and you remember we've been skinned there. I mean, like they've made playing cards out of them. But what's really happening is that today a 9-year-old boy and his father, who were picked up, and I think it was the Torrance Public School, next to the Torrance Public School, but he's a student there. They were deported today. And these people who worked, by the way, I have all my notes because I did 7 interviews in the last few hours on all this stuff. But the Ambiance Apparel Company is where it all kicked off. That's where union leader David Huerta was also arrested on Friday. And people are having a hard time finding out where their dad is or where their mom is. We are getting reporting from the LA Times on people doing stops up in the agricultural area, which is going to lead, Rob, as you know, it to $15 heads of lettuce if they go that far.
Yeah, and I know a lot of farmers that voted for Trump, gave him money, and are grateful for what he's trying to do on regulatory and water issues that are going to have an issue. And all it takes is some enforcement, and then the workforce just doesn't show up to work, and you can't get the crops in. And the downstream consequences of that are obvious.
The economic impact on California is huge. Mark, and you can't. It's not just the people who might not have paperwork to be in this country, who are scared to go to their seamstress job or their landscaping job or whatever. According to USC Dorn's Life, there are 2 million immigrants in LA County, 2 million who live in mixed status households. And they are worried that even if they have papers and go out, I have a housekeeper like this, that if somebody stops them at the stop sign and says, I need more paperwork from you, and they take them back home, they might take abuela away. Like, no kidding. I mean, because there are grandparents who don't have paperwork, or, an uncle or an aunt or whatever, even if everybody else does. There are 2 million of those mixed status households in the county, 1 million in the city of LA. So what's happening is that other people are staying home, even if they have papers. The impact on not just the construction guy who can't get a drywaller, but what about the woman who's an accountant, or the man who's a whatever he is, a nurse practitioner, and they're waiting on their nanny, and their nanny doesn't come because she's uncomfortable, leaving the valley and going to work. We've lost half of our port jobs already because of tariffs. It was just reported in the last couple of weeks. And our hospitality, as you know, Rob, is all the reservations are getting canceled because people are really uncomfortable about traveling here and worried about if they're going to get, even if if they haven't done anything wrong, there are Canadians and Germans who have been detained for 2 weeks, right? And only to find out, well, okay, now you can go, but who wants to do that? So it's the economic pile-on for California is going to be big. Newsom should be talking about that.
Yeah, and he did a little bit in the address last night, but you're right. It's not as front and center as it might be. Rob, I normally am against hypotheticals, but I want to give you one. What if the Speaker of the United States House was still a Californian? What do you think he'd be saying about all this?
I think he'd be publicly what he'd be saying is what he would need them,
or she.
Or she.
No, I mean specifically Kevin McCarthy.
You mean Kevin?
I know.
He'd be saying what he needed to support his conference and support dear leader. But I think privately, there would be a lot of urgent caution. I alluded to Valadeo. This, look, we all know it's only a few seats. There are enough seats out there where this could be the defining issue.
Yeah.
Ballart spoke out in Florida, I believe, as well. It's like you really got to be careful with these things right now. Is this what you really want to potentially cash in the house on?
Yeah, I want to show you guys one more piece of tape, and then I want to bring you folks in. So if you want to get in the conversation, please raise your hand. Front and center has been Newsom and Trump, and they're back and forth. The mayor of Los Angeles, and of course, as Lisa and Rob and most of you know, there are a lot of communities around Los Angeles that aren't governed by the mayor of Los Angeles, and the mayor of Los Angeles is like a PR job. It's not a super influential position, but nonetheless, Karen Bass, the mayor of LA, has had some role here, and of course she is the face of the curfew. Here's Karen Bass, number 10, blaming ICE for the problems that have occurred. Number 10.
A week ago, everything was peaceful in the city of Los Angeles and in all of the representatives behind me in their cities as well. Things began to be difficult on Friday when raids took place, and it's important that I begin there because that is the cause of the problems that have happened in the city of Los Angeles and other cities. This was provoked by the White House. The reason why, we don't know.
So Lisa, she was not given very high marks for the aftermath of the fires. How visible has she been the last 5 days? And what do you think her posture is towards ending this?
I think her posture is trust the police and trust the LA County sheriffs. Again, that's not her, that's county job, but she's saying trust the police organizations that are trained in this sort of civil unrest, as opposed to bringing in any sort of military units. I think that's what she's primarily saying. And look, I don't know why anybody's surprised that there were raids. I mean, right, Rob? I mean, Trump has been saying that there were going to be workplace raids, and that, yes, he emphasized the criminals, but we all knew that there were going to be, whether it was poultry, businesses in the Midwest or, pork farms or whatever, there are other places where we expected these raids to happen. Again, the amount of people that came out and protested the raids, and they were, and there was righteous indignation. I get it. But they swelled really quickly because of social media, right? But I don't think that the cops were overwhelmed. I think they would have been fine. I think right, Rob, don't you agree?
I think so.
They've been quoted at times and done on camera at times saying they're not fine.
Well,
They themselves have said that during parts of the 5 days. They've said they are overwhelmed.
But I've heard others, including Jim McDonald, saying, "We got this. We're trained for this." I mean, let's face it. Would the Marines get 2 hours of civil unrest training before they were deployed? Something like that.
It takes LAPD and the SO and the CHP a day or two to get ready for these things. So they don't respond well in the first 24, 48 hours. But once they reallocate everything, then they're fine. But also listen to what I just said, right? It's kind of like, well, who's guarding the rest of the city? I mean, it's drawing resources from their primary functions to do this.
Yeah.
I mean, look, if the Guard hadn't become a political football with Trump federalizing it, I assume it's plausible that McDonald would have asked for the Guard. In fact, I think it'll be interesting if Newsom regains control of his Guard. Does he withdraw it right away? Yeah, it'll be a tough decision to make.
I could show you more stuff. We could talk more, but let's bring in members of the two-way community to see what's on their mind. Leslie, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are and what's on your mind for Lisa and for Rob. And thank you for being part of Two Way.
Oh, thank you. So I am in Sydney, Australia, and I live in Texas as well. So I have dual citizenship. And so I've gotten to see immigration from both, inside Texas, so I can't claim to know anything about California, and Sydney, Australia. But my question is, what about where's the talk of meaningful, immigration reform? No one is saying anything about that. And, is Trump just like, we're going to turn the screws until Congress decides to act? That's part of.
Leslie, you're absolutely right. That's what I was saying about Congress. Congress has had decades to fix this. And it's like, oh, I don't know, well, decades. And they've used it because it's a great campaign issue, right, Rob? Both sides have used it.
Yeah, there's been an incentive structure, like most incentive structures in our politics, that is bad, which is don't fix this. And so the current administration has demagogued on the issue. I think it'll be interesting analysis, though, if they extend these raids to workplaces, and there's the economic effect, and these families are getting torn apart. That in the aftermath down the road still doesn't bring us back to refocusing on some solutions. Look, the reality is, of course, there are undocumented immigrants here who would be documented if we had just given them a sensible system to work within, to be here and provide labor that's essential to our economy.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. But Leslie, your question is right. Listen, I'm from Fort Worth, Texas. I know Texas really, really well.
Right.
And again, like Rob is saying, there are people here who were from other countries, Central America, South America, Asia, who were doctors in their country, who are working here under the table illegally as RNs, right?
Right.
Why didn't we find there's supposed to be an easier path, right? But they didn't fix the system. Look, we used to have the Bracera programs. There could be, we should have a meaningful guest worker program, right? Because I don't know a kid that went to high school with my kid who's going to go pick strawberries bending over in the hot sun for $10 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Actually, I will say, like living in Texas in the summer, there's a lot of jobs I would take in Minnesota to be somewhere else. So I do know people, like I see that all the time here in Australia, where you've got people that are on backpacker travel visas, And Australia is like, hey, we'll give you another 6 months here in the country if you go pick our, strawberries. And so you've got
Really?
German engineering students out there, in Queensland picking strawberries. So like,
Interesting.
there's things that you can do. And quite frankly, my kids are in their 20s. If they wanted to take some time off and travel and do that kind of work, more power to them. I mean, my brother, he went to Alaska and worked in a cannery for a summer.
Yeah.
Those things can work.
I just think, no, I think, listen, I think though, Leslie, spend some quality time in the San Joaquin Valley. Spend a summer in Kern County. I started my reporting career in Bakersfield. You couldn't pay me enough. You know what I mean? And I'm not talking about picking in the fields, but these are really, the conditions there are abhorrent, that, the housing, the wages and everything else. Look, if it had been possible to get a bunch of high school kids to go pick, we're picking food for America right here. There's just not, it'd
Well,
be
if
great
you want those conditions to improve, and look, you hear stories here in Australia as well, but I would say that, we have the ability to improve our technology. We have the ability, and that
they're just not doing it. They're not doing it.
That's right.
No.
Lisa, Leslie, thank you. Appreciate it. Just back real quick on the Iran story. President Trump is on his way to the Kennedy Center for Les Mis. And he was asked by reporters about why U.S. military personnel are being authorized to leave the Middle East. He shrugged and he said this: "You'll have to see. Thank you." Thank you is a tell, ladies and gentlemen, if you understand Donald Trump's locutions. And when he says thank you, suggests to veteran Trump watchers that something is up. You'll have to see. Thank you. He's headed to the Kennedy Center. There's also a congressional baseball game tonight, and the Capitol Police are pretty on guard there for protests that they expect. Mark, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are and what is on your mind for Rob and for Lisa. And thank you for being part of Two-Way.
Thanks for inviting me in. I'm in Peoria, Illinois. And, I think one thing that's missing in the coverage of the story is these raids are taking place because California made a policy choice. They refuse to honor ICE detainers for criminal illegals. This forces ICE to go into the community and conduct these raids. And when they conduct these raids, they are going to arrest every illegal they encounter. And the reason for that is the guy who launched the Molotov cocktails at the Jewish parade in Boulder was legal right up until that point. And if you were in the country illegally, and to get to the other point, this constant talk about we need a path to citizenship, we need reform. No, we need the border sealed, every single illegal alien deported and barred from ever returning unless they self-deport. Then we can talk about reform. Until then, we're left with Lisa talking about repeating the Democrats in 1860, but who will pick all the cotton argument. It's disgusting that she's advocating for a permanent underclass of illegal laborers to pick her strawberries and to be her abuela. It's disgusting.
Mark, hold on. First of all, disgusting is a word I use too sometimes. But let Lisa respond to what you said, okay? Lisa.
Yeah, not advocating that. I'm just telling you what's happening here. That I am not. Listen, this is not. I don't run this. I don't run the state, and I just report on what's happening. And I can tell you that there are people who are doing jobs who are here without paperwork, and one of the reasons they are crossing the border and taking these jobs, and yes, they're here illegally. They are. But one of the reasons they're doing it is that those farmers and ranchers, Rob, you know him, Mark, you know him, we've covered them for years up in the Valley. They can't afford to hire American citizens the way the system is set up now to do that ag work.
Okay. Mark, hold on.
I'm not advocating for it. I'm not saying what should be. I'm just saying what is, and that is what is happening. Nobody likes it. Nobody wants to see people doing backbreaking labor for poor wages and live in crappy conditions. That's not a good situation. But that is the way it is. And they got to fix it.
It is a factual matter. Mark, hold on. I need to update you on a bunch of stuff. Okay. First of all, the president is about to walk the red carpet at the Kennedy Center. You wouldn't want to miss that. So the director will be ready to put that in live when you see on Fox News, because they're going to cover it live. When you see that, let's pop that in so we can watch that. The chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, Senator Risch, in an interview with News Nation, said this about the partial evacuation of the U.S. Embassy in Iraq. Tensions have been rising in the Middle East. There have been threats thrown around. Negotiations with Iran are not going well. Obviously, the Israelis have said some stuff about what they're going to do. One would naturally assume all those things rise to the place where people are saying, well, maybe it's time to relocate temporarily. Evacuations are based upon a conglomerate of all the facts, and the facts always include an element of intel. Again, consistent with what we talked about at the top of the program. It seems like something's going on, and the Americans are not just being cautious. They're responding to something that they believe is going to happen. All right. Mark, again, thank you for coming in. We got to get a bunch of other stuff. We're still waiting on the president, but let's bring Michael in. Michael, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are, what's on your mind for Lisa and Rob.
Well, I'm actually in California, and I love having a guy from Illinois tell me what's wrong with my state. First of all, I was to Lisa's point earlier, 30% of the population of LA is immigrants. So if Trump comes in and forces his hand here, he's talking about destroying the fourth largest economy in the world. And it's our food. So your friend Bacha is always talking about the elite Democrats. It's the wine. They're not going to have people to pick the grapes. And outside of California, the meat processing, the chicken processing, that's all done by immigrants. And $15 lettuce is going to look like a bargain. It's going to be $100 steaks. It's going to be $50 chickens. And I just think that the economic effect of all this is going to
Trump's here.
really damage the country.
Hey, Michael, can I drop some knowledge that that was shared with me today? I did another piece. I've done a couple of pieces. I do the LATIMES Today show, right? So I'm spoken with a guy from UCLA, from USC, a bunch of different economists who really focus on this. A 2022 analysis found that foreign-born Californians account for 1/3 of all workers in restaurants and warehouses. 1/3, 40% of all home health care and child care, 50% of trucking and lodging businesses, 60% for landscaping and cleaning businesses. It will have a huge impact, and then the ripple effect of the people. For every 13 foreign-born workers who leave the labor force, according to this research, 10 American-born workers lose their jobs. And it makes sense. You know what I mean? When you're the contractor and you've lost this drywaller, right? And and that guy, who's a great electrician, and that guy who installs the best shower pans, whatever. You start removing those people, and they can't take as many jobs, and those jobs slow.
A few years ago, I read about, I guess Alabama was one of the first states to try to crack down on immigrants, and so they stopped immigrants from coming in, and I think watermelon's a big crop in Alabama, and they go, okay, well, we'll just get we'll get prisoners to pick the watermelons, and the prisoners, hey, they're out of jail. All they want to do is stand around and smoke a cigarette. They don't want to go pick watermelons. So the farmers in Alabama were affected by this stance, and this goes back several years. I can't remember when I read the article. But also, to me, as a native Californian, California was built on immigrants for 600 years. The Spanish, the Italians, the Filipinos, the Portuguese.
Michael, hold hold on one second, Michael. Let's dip and see what the president's talking about, please. He's talking about Les Mis. I'll be less interested.
Another summer of unrest. What are you
I'm
prepared
just
to
I'm
do,
just so
sir?
curious about the fashion
If
choice
this
for
turns,
both of them.
well,
You said
the
they're going to do
protests have spread
baseball
now to
and
16
Andrew Lloyd
cities
Webber.
across the U.S. If this turns in,
What you're saying, do I believe you? I don't think so.
well, I got that from the Fox News green room.
What we have is a situation in Los Angeles that was caused by gross incompetence. They didn't have the police to handle it. The police were asking us to come in. They were very late. We had to go in to save a lot of ICE officers, as you know, who were held up. They were holed up in a building, and they were being attacked. And the military went in, the National Guard went in and got them. The police weren't able, unfortunately, to move fast enough, but we moved fast enough. And while we were there, we stayed there, and we stopped tremendous destruction and death. We stopped death. We stopped a lot. And if you look at them cutting up and breaking up the sidewalk and getting it and using it as a weapon, did you see that with the curb? Where they're breaking up the curb, nice curb, and they break it up with a hammer because they couldn't get the bricks in. You know, they got caught with the bricks. We have them under arrest. They were bringing bricks in to throw at our police, to throw at our National Guard, and to throw at people. And they couldn't get them in because we got them. And after we got them, they went and took a big hammer and started breaking up the concrete sidewalk and curb. And they were handing it out to people to throw and drop on cars. You saw what they did, the damage. So if you don't do something about that, there's something very wrong. We are going to have law and order in our country.
Are you prepared, sir, to send the National Guard to other countries?
Why were you laughing at that, Michael?
Because, as I understand it, the National Guard has not done anything to help the Los Angeles police. Now, you know, you're always, many times you mention the mainstream media that they're not reporting these stories truthfully. And while I may agree with you, I don't think that folks are reporting the falsehoods and the exaggerations that Trump comes out with. So yesterday on, one of those nice liberal news stations, NPR, they were talking about, they sent the National Guard troops in here and they didn't set them up with food rations, with places to stay. These guys are sleeping on the streets in LA. They're sleeping in building lobbies. They are not helping the Los Angeles police or the Los Angeles sheriffs quell any of this. So once again, Trump is exaggerating his importance on what his policies are actually doing for us here.
All right, Michael,
Hey,
thank
Michael,
you.
have you noticed, and I want to, and
Yeah,
Rob,
go
I
ahead.
really want to direct this to you, Rob, because what I keep saying to people since this began is that this is just a continuation of a theme that we've seen since the beginning of this second Trump administration. I'm doing this as an observer, not a judge. But it's about federalism, right? It's about, does the power of the presidency and the power of the White House and Washington DC, does that supersede states' rights? And I'm just curious about, Rob, this seems to be an ongoing thing that Trump is wanting to prove.
Well, the White House continues to do an excellent job of fitting expansion of executive power into statutes that.
Rob, I'm sorry. Rob, I'm sorry to
go
interrupt
ahead.
you. Back to the president, please, because
Let's do
talking about Iran.
Mr. President Trump, what are you looking forward to tonight?
So quiet, Jeff.
I have a my question is on trade. Would you be willing to extend the deadline for
Did we
trade
miss
talks
Iran?
with these countries?
I would, but I don't think we're going to have that necessity. We made a great deal with China. We're very happy with it.
Finish up.
We have everything we need,
They keep
and we're going to do
trying to
very
find
well
the
with it,
balance
and
of how to
hopefully
keep
they are
expanding
too.
executive power in this case.
That was a very big one. As you know, we did with the UK.
Potentially with
And,
control of the National Guard.
I tell you what,
It seems to
we're
me
rocking in
there's-
terms of
there's a
deals. Now,
constant
at a certain
probing,
point, we're just going to send letters
of
out.
how to keep expanding and how much those powers can be expanded without running into trouble with the courts. When it comes to this issue on the Guard, I think the judge has set a hearing, I believe, for tomorrow, but did not issue, a temporary restraining order or immediate injunction for the governor when he wanted to regain control.
Right. Let me get to two things because we're going to run out of time and we got to get to them, and then we'll go back to you all as time allows. David Hogg, vice chair of the DNC, according to Politico, by secret ballot, has been removed as the vice chair of the DNC. Now, he can run again for it. I'm not sure what his chances are, but he's currently been, according to Politico, he's been removed from that position. This was a procedural questions were raised about how he got elected in the first place. We'll see what happens now, whether he tries to run and whether he can win. The other thing is, I just want to talk about Brian Wilson and show you one clip. There's a million, but I want to show you one that we chose. This is number 20. And then to the extent Rob and Lisa would like to weigh in on the cosmic importance of Brian Wilson, you will. Please roll 20.
Pink.
Went to a dance looking for romance. Saw Barbara Ann, so I thought I'd take a chance. Rocking and a rolling, rocking and a reeling, Barbara Ann, tried Peggy Sue, danced with Mary Lou, but I knew they wouldn't do. Rocking and a rolling, rocking and a reeling, Barbara Ann,
All right. So, Rob, you're third generation California. Lisa's one. If Willie Nelson ever passes, we'll go first to Lisa. Rob, how do the Beach Boys play in the Stutzman household, legacy household?
Big deal. I mean, quintessentially Californian. My parents grew up on the beaches of Southern California. I remember being exposed to Beach Boys as a child. I put Pet Sounds on this morning when I heard the news to reminisce and to pay homage to just a brilliant sound, one of the great artistic Californians of all time.
Yeah, Lisa.
I interviewed Mike Love just a few months ago. He was playing at the Greek, and so I went on the tour bus. And first of all, I'd interviewed him years and years ago. He's still in great form, I have to say. I mean, he's a fun interview, and he told this incredible story about how Brian's dad, who was managing him at the time, got them to sell off their catalog for this ridiculously low amount. And there's a great documentary, and y'all are going to have to Google it. Google's not broken, as I tell my kids, just look it up. But there is a recent Beach Boys documentary on one of the streamers, Netflix, that came out in the last year, because that's why I interviewed him. And I just highly recommend it. It was absolutely riveting.
Yeah. The story of just Good Vibrations and how expensive it was to make. They recorded it in 4 different locations. And as I said at the top of the show, the Beatles, John and Paul, were just consumed with Brian Wilson and the talent. And Brian was consumed with them. He said he cried when he heard Strawberry Fields for the first time. Their cosmic relationship was quite something, very competitive. And Pet Sounds, again, is just, it's a masterpiece.
Mike told me a story about partying with them.
Yeah.
It was that time.
Yeah.
And it's just there's just great stuff in there that I think, because of Mike's age, he feels much more comfortable. I mean, he said that. He's like, what have I got to lose?
Exactly.
And just kind of like, tell us all.
Owen, do I read from your face that you want to get in on the Beach Boys? Yeah or no? Thumbs up if the answer is yes. Yes. All right. Here comes Owen. Owen, tell folks who don't know where you are and what's on your mind for one of the world's greatest rock and roll figures ever. After you unmute.
Am I unmuted? There we go.
Yes, sir.
Well, I'm joining from Brooklyn, New York. If you can't tell by the plants and the disco ball. It's a beautiful day out here, so I was putting on the Beach Boys when I was walking around, and they don't hit the same in New York as they hit in California, but I'm a big fan. I do have a question, or do I need to stick with the Beach Boys?
No, you can ask a question.
Okay, so I'm going to attempt a masterful segue. So all this talk of states' rights and Waymos being ablaze, I wanted to talk about AI really quick.
Sure.
So with the big beautiful bill, there's AI legislation that's been included in it that talks about at a federal level banning state regulations for 10 years. And they're starting to get some opposition building up from representatives that already voted for it, but also some senators. Um, I'm concerned by that. And in particular, I'm concerned by the addition of waiving at least civil liability, but I think more than just that for AI companies. So for a lot of your audience that might not have been fans of the COVID vaccines and how pharma had a lot of their liability waived, think of that, but AI is going to be forced on you whether you like it or not. And if something goes wrong with it, you're not allowed to sue them.
It's a
So my
good
question,
concern. Good
Yes.
concern.
Yes.
there's something not good about it. And I don't like that it's being shoved into this bill and being spun as tax cuts, tax cuts, tax cuts. JD Vance was just on Theo Vaughn's podcast. I didn't listen to the whole episode, but I saw a couple clips, and JD Vance said his argument was, well, I don't want a progressive state like California passing some woke regulation with regards to AI. I felt like that was pretty thin. Then later he says, I've been speaking with some senators, and Marsha Blackburn is an example, who, to her credit, has been a big AI skeptic. She's concerned about a lot of Nashville artists and their intellectual property being siphoned into educating these LLMs and then not getting compensated properly. And then he casually said, I don't think it's going to end up in the final bill, but I don't really believe him. So my question to Lisa and Rob is, being in California where all the AI companies are based, your understanding of maybe the impact of the AI lobby, and then also to Mark, what's the reality of this legislation as this groundswell of opposition is building up? What's the reality of that actually being included in the final version?
Yeah. So Rob spends a fair amount of his time convincing his clients that of all the consultants in Sacramento, he knows the most about AI. So with that introduction, Rob.
Here, we'll see if I can pull it off.
Yeah.
It's a big issue here in Sacramento. The legislature here has organized a specific committee to look at this and deal with it. If California regulates something, then basically that becomes a national standard just because of the size of the market. We just saw this being undone recently with automobiles by the Trump administration. So this is where the AI lobby has gone to DC and is trying to go for this preemption in federal legislation. I just think and they want to protect themselves as well. There's some thinking, I think, in the industry, as most industries will do, that are seeking more of a monopoly or barrier to entry, is set up regulatory schemes that benefit themselves and keep other players out of the market. But this is largely, I think, where the industry wants to go. California would be their primary concern, but wouldn't be their only concern about overreaching regulation in their view.
Lisa, we got to end on time because of
That's
another
okay.
program. But
what time's it? 58. Just real quickly.
Yeah.
JD Vance wouldn't be vice president without Peter Thiel. Look into it.
Yeah, there you go. The answer, Owen, is it'll probably be in the bill, but not 100% because there's cross-cutting opposition to it. Some on the left and some on the right don't like that provision. But the tech MAGA world wants it in there, and I think it'll probably stay in. Grateful to you, Owen. Thanks for coming in. South Brooklyn, we said hi. Lisa and Rob, very grateful to you both for lending your Golden State expertise, and happy to have you here, and hope you'll both come back.
Anytime. It's good to be with you.
Cool platform, Mark. Mark and I met in New York the other day, and he explained it to me. I thought I was just meeting you for a personal Zoom. I had no idea I was going to be on your show. I texted my friend Laura, like, I didn't know.
We'll blame Lori for that.
Very cool community.
Thank you all for watching. Turn over right now. My friend Bridget Fedesi and her program, Real America, and the topic is divorce. Whether you've been divorced, parents divorced, kids divorced, whatever it is, please turn over. And if you've never watched Sample Bridget's show, if you've watched it, now's your time. And I'll see you at 9 a.m. tomorrow with lots of news to tell you about. But I'll see you on the morning meeting at 9 a.m. Thank you all. Have a good evening. Go watch Bridget, as I will be doing.